All right. Well, Brian has stopped typing, so let's go ahead and do this podcast thing because I'm sick of hearing click-clack on the typeboard. Here's the deal. We all know how important Gen Z, I'm sorry, Brian, Gen Z for those of you on the other side of the pond, but I'm going to say Gen Z because that's, how I say it. We all know how important Gen Z is. The incoming generation, they're going to radically change work itself. They've been born into this technology that some of us are still grappling with on a daily basis. They have completely different ways of looking at what work is, what work means, why they should do it. And everybody loves to pontificate. But not today. No, not today. We're not doing that. What we're doing is we're getting down to brass tacks on what are some of the things you need to do to build a proper Gen Z strategy, talent acquisition strategy. And that is exactly what we're going to talk about in what I believe is going to be our shortest episode thus far when we get back.
Here we go. An episode so fast, even Gen Z won't get distracted halfway through. Welcome to the People MBA. This week's episode is brought to you by Plum. Let's see who called in. Thanks for calling the People MBA. We're probably busy doing paperwork to buy our moon-based headquarters. If you're the type to leave voice messages, go for it.
Hi, James and Brian. It's Tracy Parsons from Flockety, and I was wondering, what do you think businesses need to do to be more attractive to Gen Z? Let me know.
All right, let's be the only podcast who references Gen Z or any generation without having to establish what years those people were born, because I think at this point, that horse is dead. I don't think we need to establish what that is. You all know the Gen Z are the youngins, the youths, the kids as they were. To me, that's what it feels like. They're so damn cute. But we're going to have to hire these people. And we all know via TikTok, via Instagram, via Reels, via Snapchat, if you're still into that sort of thing, this is a very different audience of people. And if we're going to succeed in hiring them, we got to think differently. And Brian has put together a very nice checklist. Checklist it doesn't do it justice. It's really a sense of how do you think about and what are the things you should be considering when thinking about your Gen Z or Gen Z talent acquisition strategy. How did you do to intro that, Brian? Does that sound like what you did, what you built?
It definitely does, but it's definitely Gen Z. I mean, I don't know what the Z business is. So if you're expecting a Gen Z checklist, it's not. It's a Gen Z checklist.
I will quote Pulp Fiction. Zed's dead, baby. Zed's dead. Okay.
Dead. Oh, my God.
There you go. And by the way, we now owe Quentin Tarantino money just for saying that. Okay. All right, Brian, first off, let's talk about, let's skip the stuff about why Gen Z matters. Let's talk about how they are different and just some ideas of how you approach changing your talent acquisition strategy to meet this brand new audience of new workers.
Yeah, so I think, first of all, the sad truth, James, is they're not the young'uns. They used to be the young'uns. I don't want to make you feel really, really old here.
Too late.
But actually, we are very close to Gen Z running the universe, like being in charge of all the things, The fact is, the vast majority of the most valuable jobs globally, you're probably trying to convince a Gen Z to take the role. It's a big percentage of most people's talent acquisition strategy. And the fact is, if we just look at what is branding for us for a second, it's the idea of differentiation. It's the idea of being more relevant to your audience than your competitors. And it's finding some way of being memorable, because if you're different and relevant but instantly forgettable, then that kind of doesn't work. But so let's just hone in on one of those three. Let's just look at relevance for a second. Okay. Gen Z want things differently. They want things a certain way. They are impatient and inflexible about a certain amount of things. Love it or hate it, I don't care. But it's the reality and it's not changing anytime soon. So if you want to win and you want your strategy to work, then we can't just treat your talent audience as one homogenous sea of potential talent. It's just not going to cut it. Or at least if you want to be more competitive, the smarter thing to do is to segment your audience. And if Gen Z is important, it's probably time we just ran through a checklist to say, okay, are we as relevant as we could or should be if this talent is really important to our organization? So there's the premise for this. I think it's definitely on the mind of a lot of TA leaders I talk to. So I wanted to put a tangible list together so people can download this and just very quickly, at a glance, grade how you are showing up against how relevant you are with this segment of your audience. So that's the premise.
Exactly. No, it's a great document. I'm staring at it right now. By the way, I forgot to mention this document is brought to you by Plum. Thank you, Plum, for sponsoring this week's episode. Thrilled you could be a part of this. And yeah, obviously Gen Z is important. So Brian, I'm looking at the list. Everybody who's listening to this podcast or watching this video has already downloaded this guideline. I know they have, because of course they have. Why wouldn't they have? And they're looking at it and they're going, and they're seeing things like clear purpose and value alignment, transparent communication, real employee voices and stories. Dive in. Where are some places you have most commonly seen people assuming their communication, their brand work is aligned to Gen Z when you're saying, well, actually, just a minute there, friends, it's really not? Where are some obvious mistakes people are making most commonly?
Well, the format and the way in which organizations are dictating how you engage with the organization can be a big mistake, a big issue for being relevant to Gen Z straight out of the gate. Okay. They want fast, short, micro, iterative communications. They want instant feedback, not filling out forms, sending emails, watching long videos. We think video, it's all about video and this, that, and the other. So actually, Gen Z would prefer a quick Slack message, actually, yeah, or a DM in Instagram or, wherever they are, TikTok. So just, it's not even like what the message is. It's how you're delivering the message and how you're facilitating a two-way engaging conversation that is just expected.
Yeah. So what you're really talking about is breaking down some of these behemoth, monolithic platforms that we're so used to building, like career sites that are just 4 pages of, okay, one is the why work here, one is the DEI page, one is the list of jobs, one is the culture page, and it hasn't changed in 3 years because, let's be fair, getting that thing out the door the first time was such a pain in the butt. So you're like, I'm never changing that again, which is fairly monolithic, that we have a single LinkedIn channel meant for everyone. We've got a single TikTok or whatever, that it is meant for everyone. And you're saying, no, it's got to be shrunk, broken down, not spoon-fed. I think that's obviously pejorative, and I'm not trying to say that. But what I'm saying is, and it makes sense to me because this is an audience who is getting perpetual streams of information at any given time. Trying to make them read Moby Dick while they're listening to 4 albums at the same time may not be a winning strategy. It may be instead you boil it down to core ideas, feed them as they need them, and over time they'll start to absorb them. Mm-hmm. Is that a fair assessment?
It absolutely is. It absolutely is. And that's just one example of a tactic of how you show up and dictate the terms of engaging with your organization, your brand. Now, let's take the conversation somewhere else and look at how your brand shows up and how you are assessed by Gen Z. What's your, I call it citizenship, but Gen Z is really, really, really conscious of an organization's ethics and social impact, such that this used to be a nice to have or a cherry on the cake or, something peripheral in an organization. Like Patagonia is a great example of like their whole organization is focused on making the world better than they found it. There isn't many of those organizations. There's a lot. There's a lot, but there's more organizations who are just money oriented, just all about here's what you get in terms of your career path and all the rest of it. Gen Z want to know that they can go to sleep at night with a clean conscience, or also they've got the opportunity to contribute to making the world a better place in some way, shape, or form. And this used to be so low down on the priority list of somebody making a career decision. It was almost not really worth investing any time or effort thinking about. Not the case with Gen Z. Not the case with Gen Z, such that it's now a competitive opportunity to introduce some sort of social impact just to be relevant with this generation.
This episode is so short. There's hardly time to tell you to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you get podcasts.
I think there's a level of, and I'm going to use a term that is, again, obviously pejorative and not meaning it to be. There's this sense of signaling, right? We all know it's virtue signaling or whatever. That's all stupid and it's performative and all that stuff. I think very often this is a generation where everybody's signaling all the time, but they're aware of what they're signaling. It used to be people didn't notice that they all wearing the same shirt, the same tie, and the same dress and the same shoes. Like they didn't notice that they all kind of fit in these boxes, and it was just a natural assumption. Oh, we'll tribal up a little bit. But now it's an audience that says, I'm trying to tell the world who I am, and I want people to understand me, to see me, to understand what I'm about, and I want to find like people, and that because people are more than one thing, they're not just gay, they're not just Black, they're not just college educated, they're not just anything, that they have this internal diversity of who they are and things they care about. Mm-hmm. That when they talk about, when they want your company to say, we stand for this, that is the signal they want to hear to say, at least you care to understand that you are part of a larger system, that you are aware that being a company comes with baggage, that you have a responsibility to give back. You have a responsibility to be part of the larger universe. And that this is an audience that wants to know, we may not always agree on everything, but I want to know that you're playing the same kind of game that I'm playing.
Absolutely. And, you know, if you do have enough to be relevant to Gen Z, such that they join your organization, then that's great. And you've achieved something, really fundamental with what we're trying to do here. However, Gen Z won't tolerate not having their expectations met. Once they're working for you. So keeping hold of this talent has never been harder.
Yeah.
It's never been harder to keep hold of talent to satisfy Gen Z. And it's not, they're entitled and they're not sort of unreasonable and all of these things. They just have
structural reasons for that.
They just have a better sense of what they're willing to sacrifice and commit to. And they have a much more clear and focused idea of what they're in it for. You know, these are true digital natives. They're not going to tolerate terrible technology, inferior resources, when they know that there's something better out there. They expect seamless technology experiences. They want to learn on their own terms. They want options and a say in how they build their own skills and personal and professional development. So all of these things are really important. And if they're not there, then you risk losing this talent faster than the time it took for them to join in the first place. So this isn't just a talent acquisition checklist. This is how relevant are we as an organization to Gen Z from an acquisition and a retention perspective as well.
Yeah, and there's lots of obviously inroads to things like learning and development, where learning and development is so classically like, okay, everybody, you're a manager now. Let's go take a 4-day class on how not to get sued by people. Okay, you're a manager now. You've been trained. This is an audience that I once referred to this audience as the Keanu generation, the Matrix generation, because everything they ever wanted to learn was a YouTube video away. Like it was 10 minutes away from I know Kung Fu. Like it was like almost downloaded into your brain. And that is the expectation, but companies are still acting like, okay, everybody, now let's open our textbooks to page 4 and we're going to read aloud. And that's just one instance, right? Anything HR does, from paperwork and claims and, just how you're providing benefits and what those benefits are and what they look like and who they're for and who they're framed for. All of that has to be reinvented. And so it is not just a recruiting thing. You're right. It is the reinvention of understanding what culture at a business truly means for this audience, because they perceive it and think about it very, very differently.
Yeah, and it's a wake-up call, because let's be super real and honest here. It's far easier, quicker, and cost-effective to change the shop window just to be more shiny and attractive to Gen Z. But if you're successful in hiring all of these people, and you have an organization that is just not willing to shift and cater for them, they will leave faster than, it's just not conducive. It's not smart, but older generations, for example, open to structured training programs. Gen Z, they prefer micro learning, self-paced content, social learning.
I'm going to push back on that. I think part of what's changed is the demand, what people expect, what people want. And I think when you're surrounded by how Amazon, Netflix et al. Work and everything is on demand, everything is a button and everything's trackable and everything understands that, you realize that the standard learning class of 4 days worth of bullshit is exactly that bullshit. Look, I'm Gen X, I didn't know there were options. I didn't demand that because I didn't think companies would ever listen. Oh, yeah. And I think part of it is, it's not that I wanted it that way. I hate every second of that training and that approach and how things work. I just felt like the only person who would be like, this sucks, right? And looking around, people going, oh, I'm taking my notes the way I'm supposed to. Gen X specifically is the transition from baby boomer to something very, very different. And we only got pieces of it. We only saw, some change, but we could see how it was going to change. And Gen Z is really starting to take that promise and expanding on, opening up, making it bloom.
Yeah, but that's a really good example. And you and I want those things just as much as Gen Z.
Yes.
But we're willing to tolerate different. And Gen Z are not.
Yeah, says one business owner to another who clearly rejected the entire process en masse as hard as they could. Yes, okay. If we codicil it and asterisk it thusly, yes, I will accept the premise.
All right. But,
all right, go ahead.
I was going to give another example, but maybe we're getting we're giving too much away here. But career pathing is a big one that I think is something that really needs to be interrogated and assessed. And I think older generations, often focused on climbing a defined ladder. You look at I nearly said Gen Z then, you nearly got me.
Welcome.
Gen Z, they do value skills. They do value title. What's on their email signature, but they want multiple career experiences early on. Yeah. They want multiple opportunities to take their career path in a weird and wonderful direction if something is attractive or gets their attention.
They have a better, stronger sense of their own autonomy and willingness to learn and willingness to try new things where, my dad was on a career path from the day he started at his company. And he was smart enough to shut up if he didn't like it. Like, that's just where you live. And this is a place where they say, look, I can invent myself 17 different ways. I want to be my authentic self. And there's all sorts of coded language around what that looks like. But yeah, they do have that sense of, why can't I spend a year over in that team? Because it's going to make me more valuable, more interesting, more well-rounded. And I can bring ideas from multiple functions, multiple domains, and bring them together to find something brand new. And that's really what businesses should be investing in.
Absolutely. And if they're not going to get growth, impact, and recognition where they are, they're less likely to stay long term. So their tolerance for putting up with less than satisfactory conditions is way lower.
All right. I promised the shortest episode in our history, in our long and exalted history of 14 episodes. Yeah, let's call it 14. This is definitely it. We definitely hit that. Because I just want to avoid two old dudes talking about these young kids and their existence on our proverbial lawns. So I think definitely go check out People MBA. Go download the checklist. Go download the guide. It is incredibly valuable, helping you score and kind of giving you a sense of how much work do we really have to do here and how far have we fallen behind because we've not quite paid attention to this. So go check that out. The download and this episode is brought to you by Plum. Thank you, Plum, for sponsoring this. And that is what we have. We have some plans for what's next, but we're not going to spill. We're not there yet. So thanks for listening. Thanks for being a part of this, and tell people about the People MBA. Let them know they can get it on YouTube, on podcasts, or just subscribe. So Brian, any last words about Gen Z?
Yeah, it's Gen Z. Thanks, everybody.
No, it's not. Okay. All right. Thanks, everybody. See you later.
Well, they promised quick and they delivered. Sometimes just meeting expectations wins the day. Anyway, make sure to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you get podcasts. And if this episode was useful, tell a friend. Until next time, later, tater.